Hi everyone. Thanks a lot to CII for hosting this session. This is Abhishek. I'm the founder of a company called CX Ventures. We are a digital enabler. Uh, uh, Pleasure to host this session. And as you all know, the topic, the theme of the session is consumer insights and behavior shift towards e-commerce. I think it's a topic which is pretty hot right now, and everyone is experiencing it. And we have a great panel here uh, of entrepreneurs who are there and who are doing it. I'll just like to quickly introduce the panel, and then we will take up some of the themes, some of the agendas, and we'll get insights from our panelists. So to start with, we have Anthony. He runs a company called Tagilis. I will let him talk about what his company does. A bit a short intro about the company.
Thanks, Abhishek. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony. I'm one of the founders of Tagless. We're a merchandising engine for online commerce, which basically means our product. We study the data within an e-commerce site based on the last 30 days, and we predict what products are most likely going to sell on the three funnels within an e-commerce site, which are your search funnel or site search, as you may call it, your category of collection pages, and your recommendations. And we also have an element in which the merchant can also override the engine and basically also add external insights that they want to use case in terms of deciding what to show on the front end. So it's not a rigid engine which only decides to show by itself. So it actually applies both human intelligence and machine intelligence to decide what to show on an e-commerce site. And the end goal is to basically improve the click-through rate from a listing page to a product page. And the hypothesis there is that if more visitors end up viewing products, there's a higher chance they'll actually end up buying products, therefore improve the conversion rate. Right? That's what we do. Thank you.
Very interesting stuff, Anthony. We'll come back to you for some insights from you from the category and product side.
Absolutely.
Next up, we have Bharat Sethi. Bharat has been an entrepreneur. He's been successful entrepreneur, exited two startups, and currently he's building a very interesting digital first brand called Rage Coffee. And I'll just quickly bring him in to tell us a bit about his brand.
Thank you, Abhishek. Indeed a pleasure to be here with you all and to everyone out there listening to us. Hope we can add some value to your entrepreneurial journey. So I have been an entrepreneur since 2012, so serial entrepreneur. I started a company called Poster Gully in 2012, which was a direct-to-consumer venture. At that time, direct-to-consumer, I think the term or the phrase did not even exist. I built that company to a substantial scale, very, very lean setup, 20 odd people, about $2 million in top line in 4 years. And I exited the company in 2016. Then I built a B2B e-commerce company, and that also scaled really well. In 2018, I started Somabhan Commerce, which is the current company, which houses Rage Coffee. Rage Coffee is a emerging coffee company in India, building very innovative coffee products, direct to consumer, digitally native. The goal was to build a 500 crore company completely digitally native. Does not mean that we distribute only digitally, but the essence and the DNA of the company is very digital. Happy to be taking your questions about entrepreneurship, digital, future, and anything that crosses your mind.
Thanks a lot, Bharat.
Thank you.
And I've also been a customer of Bharat from Poster Gully. You wouldn't know it, but I've been one of his oldest, way back in the day. And I new startups are exploring the coffees as well. So hopefully.
Awesome, Anthony. That's so great. Good to know.
Good to see you.
We have another digital first entrepreneur, brand entrepreneur with us here, Suraj from the beauty company. I would just call him in and let him give us a quick intro.
Hi guys, pleasure meeting you all here. I started my journey 15 to 17 years ago with a chain of retail stores into mobile, tablet, CE, PC, etc. Parallel to that, I had my own website, maniacstore.com. Wanted to become a next Flipkart, but over a period of years, I realized that it's too late and it requires a million and billions of dollars to become the next Flipkart. So during the journey of the retail store and having the own website and starting to sell online into those categories, we started growing, and we had a pain point of tech solutions, and we started building tech for our own selves, which ultimately led me to create a company called DSYH. Don't scratch your head. Which has now been acquired by Vinkalam Group, and I have taken 100% exit out of that startup. During the journey of the entire e-commerce ecosystem growing in India, I realized 4 to 5 years ago that now is the time to take a shift from selling branded items and getting into private labels. That was the time when Beardo, which is currently one of the leading men's grooming brand in India, tied up with us, and we till date are their exclusive partners for pan-India e-commerce operations. That is my other company apart from the Beautico. And right from 20 orders a day to 10,000 plus orders a day, we have seen the journey of Beardo growing from a private label to becoming a brand and get acquired 100% by Marico this financial year. 2 years ago, I had a thought that we created a tech company, sold it off. I had my retail operation, sold it off. I ran trading for multiple private labels in India, scaled them, took it to the next big level. But what about me? I always wanted to have one of my own brand. That was the time we started researching and did a lot of research that which category do we want to get into, because the entire topic that we are going to discuss today, the consumer buying pattern, the insights and the shift of the buying pattern of the consumers is directly related to how I came up with the idea of launching the Beautico. So 2 years ago, we did a lot of research and finally closed down that we want to get into the women's beauty category. Target audience, 18 to 45 aged women, women's beauty products. And yes, that's how the Beautico was born. So in a nutshell, this is my background. Open questions and discussions further. Thank you.
Super interesting journey, Suraj, and you've been there, done that. So we are looking forward to a lot of insights from you. Last not the least, we have Sanchit, another very interesting entrepreneur and startup. Sanchit runs a company called Lal 10. I will just bring him in and let him tell us about it.
Thanks Abhishek for the introduction. It's lovely to be here with all of you guys. I think it would be a great learning platform for me and for everyone here. And so I am one of the co-founders of Lal 10, and so Lal 10 is basically working with around 1,500 artisans communities in 8 states of India. Our objective is to empower these artisan communities and create more of designer handicraft products. We are essentially a B2B marketplace working with these artisans and connecting them to a lot of domestic and international retailers. Right. So I have experience of working with Flipkart, when I actually started my journey, my entrepreneurial journey with Lal 10. And having worked with Flipkart, it's something which gave me a great learning in terms of how e-commerce can be helpful in growing a business. Right. And so Lal 10 started off 4.5 years ago from Bangalore. And now we are 3 co-founders running this organization from Noida with a team of 25 people. And highly passionate about crafts, Indian crafts, and how we can bring that change in the entire supply chain, right from the artisan level to the final customer, which can be a both online and offline retail customer. So yeah, that's something that we have been up to, and it has been pretty exciting, and learning capabilities have actually grown for the artisans over the time.
Yeah, I think that's a very that's a cause worth building, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs here in this session, I think, you can see the passion reflecting out of Sanchit's introduction on artists and artisans. I think that's a great, that's a great thing, because I think when we talk about e-commerce and digital, we tend to get restricted to the India, which we call, the tier 1, that tier 1 audience, right? A lot of us are part of that. But actually, the bigger story for e-commerce is the Bharat audience, which is the actual India. And I think what Sanchit is talking about is actually that audience,
Right.
And e-commerce is actually an equalizer. I think that's the biggest, I would say, disruption, where anyone can start selling to anyone, anywhere, right? And that actually changes the whole, paradigm, because earlier to be a retailer, you would have to open a space and you'll have to, have a catchment area and you'll have to have, assortment tailored to that catchment area. But with e-commerce, I think it's democracy, right? So anyone can sell to anyone. And I think, that's the angle which we can take up, during our discussion. But just to start with, I think, the million dollar question, I think we all know that, for the last couple of years, India has been going through a digital, revolution, thanks to Flipkart, thanks to Facebook, thanks to Google. The entire ecosystem has matured. And, we all are entrepreneurs, for the last 10 years, we have been, building. And there have been a lot of talks about how digital is going to disrupt. I think it's in the last couple of years where we have actually started seeing the reality, the output of that. So I would just want to, get, each of your views on how you have seen that, journey of the consumer from the traditional, to the e-commerce. And, what are your key takeaways in terms of, how the consumer behavior has really changed? And I would also like to add to that once, we have inputs from each of you. So I think that's the bigger question on, is this a sustainable trend? Is this something, which will, keep growing, and how big can this be? Or is it just something which we all keep talking about and, it's not a reality yet? So would like to start with Bharat, and, Bharat, if, because you have been on the B2C side for some time. So what kind of changes have you seen over the last 10 years in your journey on the consumer behavior?
Yeah, very frankly, very honestly, Abhishek, I have been quite disappointed with the growth and penetration of, if we're talking about e-commerce in India. So, I'm of the opinion, and that may be a little too personal to, how I have seen the market from my lens. But the market has been, over the last 10 years, if you see, Flipkart came in 2007-8, and then 2011, the VC started to pour in money. Last decade or so, we should have been somewhere else. I mean, that is where I come from. That's my kind of first point. So I'm not extremely, excited. I'm very excited about the opportunities. I'm always extremely passionate about the potential that India holds. But the growth of transacting users and serious e-commerce buyers has been slow. There are some categories that have matured, definitely, and that I think is something that we're all proud of. Also, to see Myntra being exited to Flipkart, Walmart exiting to Flipkart, then Flipkart being bought out by Walmart, and so all of that has been great. But there are some very fundamental problems that exist in the Indian market. They are to do with the consumer behavior, as we're talking about it. They're to do with how much trust we've been able to build. They're also to do with how much of effort has gone into homegrown e-commerce. India has everything. We have all the masala, all the spices, all the ingredients to build a large, fantastic Alibaba out of India, right? But that to me seems like a distant dream, although there is a lot of potential. Demonetization was one kind of, in the last 8-9 years, there was one time when I felt that, things are going to change. We're going to change. COD is not going to come back as, demon haunting e-commerce, and people are going to mature. And when I keep digging into the data I realize it's much better to, build a cred and a cult fit in India rather than go Bharat. And this is very personal again, because the 15 million transacting active online consumers who are paying online for online services, for me, in the next 5 years or so also, I think they are the ones who will still going to be driving the maximum volume of transactions online. But what COVID has done now, I think there is extreme positivity, and I think we have leapfrogged those 5 years. So my the shift that I've seen, in my opinion, has been in the last, let's say, quarter or so after COVID, because I've seen, and the numbers will tell you, but I honestly feel the grocery could be around from 2% to about even 8 to 10% right now. It is a huge possibility. We don't have the numbers yet, and only possibly we'll know, let's say, towards the end of the year or financial year. But yeah, I feel that we have leapfrogged, and there is a lot of opportunity now.
Great, Bharat. I think that's some experience speaking. Uh, Anthony, would you like to pitch into this, looking at data from a product perspective?
I'd like to also like piggyback on 2 points that Bharat mentioned earlier. So I think in the early on days, trust was an issue. I mean, you tend to trust a Flipkart and an Amazon in general, and not just from a brand perspective, also from a process perspective. They had the entire reverse logistics part taken care of, right? I feel that with a lot of brands coming on board, I mean, while you have all the technology to sell something to the customer, the doubt customers have is if I don't like something, how do I return it back? And that is always taken care of by Flipkart, right? But that being said, I mean, on the second point, as Bharat mentioned, COVID, April was a crazy month. I mean, sales just plummeted all the way rock bottom, right? But for example, the June numbers, which I'm seeing, are phenomenal right now, which also means that a lot of people have, out of, I would say, necessity, just started transacting online, just taking a leap of faith. Now I think it's also up to the companies, the e-commerce companies, to deliver to that faith and potentially service those bad orders, because you will have some returns coming in play, right? You're going to have a bunch of transactions. And if you can keep that customer experience both before and after purchase, then you're going to have a lifelong customer, right? So that entire process of buying all the way to like that 1 month after buying, that has to be taken care of. But from the data, we're seeing that the numbers are up 30-40% in categories which I thought were not essential, but it is essential to somebody, right? Talk about footwear, it is up the roof. Talk about jewelry, it is up the roof, right? I don't know where people are buying jewelry right now, but they're all buying good stuff right now. But it's also because of brand trust, and I think right now there is some income they want to dispose. But I would say it depends on COVID how long it goes. I would say if end of the year it continues, this trend will continue for a while and hopefully remain for a longer time in the years ahead as well.
No, great, makes sense. Sanchit, you starting from B2B offline, and now moving to online. I'm sure you would be much more excited about online than Bharat. So I would like
No,
to.
I'm 100% excited. I'm building everything online. My only thing is about the maturity of Abhishek.
Disappointment.
I would like to see maturity coming in faster, because I don't want to reach 500 million transacting users in 2050.
Yeah. No, I can completely feel your pain, because being an e-commerce entrepreneur for the last 10 years, like I said, when I started this theme, the topic that hey, this is something which we all have been talking about for 10 years. When is it going to happen? But I think what I'm trying to ask Sanchit is, because he's coming from an offline background, for him everything will be an upside, right? So would like your views on how you are seeing the consumer behavior change, not just in COVID but before that also, in a broader sense.
Sure. So I would see it in two perspectives. So one is in terms of potential, right? Because that's something that we have identified 5 years back during our journeys to one of the artisan clusters. And I'll be talking about both on the supply and on the demand side, right? And obviously the second thing is what the maturity point that Bharat is making. That's a very fair and valid point today, right? Where we stand at with our e-commerce. So coming to the potential side, while we were during our journeys to clusters, so I still remember that when we were in one of the villages in Uttar Pradesh, and that's in UP East, right? So one thing that we realized 5 years back is that people still don't know what WhatsApp is, right? What Facebook is. They do have, because of the Chinese smartphones coming into the Indian market, right? That digital revolution started, where basically a person in the village can afford to have that 4,000 or a 5,000 rupee smartphone, right? And they can engage themselves and their communities on that phone itself, on that Android device. So that's something that that was a starting point for us, and kind of an ignition to a journey, because that's when we realized that today we can bring these communities onto one of the platforms. We can maybe start a WhatsApp group, and that's what we actually started with. We started working with them, communicating with them, and transacting with them simply on a WhatsApp group, because that's something they were not aware about. So we actually made them download that WhatsApp app and they started interacting and communicating with us on that WhatsApp group itself, where they started sending us different products, prices. So all that communication began. If I talk about the artisan community. And so that is where, the digital revolution in terms of, I would say, which has been brought about also to a greater extent by the internet penetration in India that happened in the last 5 to 6 years. where the internet actually reached to the villages and there were phones available where people can come and people can actually log in and come online basically. That was one thing that we witnessed, and we started bringing more and more such communities online, right? Our model still remained on the demand side, still remained much to an offline extent, because we initially wanted to aggregate these people, see the kind of products they are making, how better we can help them in terms of more designs and empowering them. But our demand side remains still offline, because that's what we believe, that we had confidence in that we would be working with an offline model, right? Coming on later, like 3 years, after 3 years into this model, we realized that more and more buyers now want a better customer experience, right? So if you talk about the maturity of an online e-commerce market today, I think in terms of quantities and in terms of numbers, we are definitely going. We do see a lot of different product categories. We do see 100 platforms which are operating in the market, right? But I think when you talk about the consumer behavior and the consumer winning the consumer mindset, that only comes in terms of the right personalization that we can provide today, right? With our demand strategy, and the right reach we can provide with our products. So that's something that we are still on a learning stage, and I think that's not true for us, but in general, as what Bharat was talking about, that is what is lacking in terms of maturity today in the market, right? And that is something we, as the online channels and the online portals, are now trying to accomplish. Because eventually, see, with the digital revolution coming in, and even with the COVID scenario, we see people spending a lot of time online. If I talk about the Indian perspective or globally as well, right? So 80% of our time, the time that people are spending on internet, or time people are spending on their mobile phones, right? 80% goes to the entertainment and the social apps. It's only very limited time that a person would actually come on the retail side of things, or would want to see different e-commerce products, or would want to buy things. So that's where the maturity part lies, where how we as brands can actually make our offerings more personalized, how we can better customize products for them to be able to make that transaction happen. And I think that is something which will evolve with time. We are currently in that learning phase. And that's where it will take us around 3-4 years, maybe 5 years, to bring about that change actually.
That's very interesting, Sanchit. And Suraj, coming to you, because you ran a chain of offline stores, you mentioned in the electronic category, right? If I'm right. So I'm sure at that point, the feeling might have been that, hey, e-commerce is actually giving discounts and taking away our consumers. And I think that's a legacy which we e-commerce entrepreneurs have to carry with us. And that's one of the angles which I wanted your view on from a behavior perspective, because e-commerce is perceived as a discounting channel. We will get something cheaper, and we'll get it at our home, and that's a perception which even today consumers have. And now that you're on the online side, how are you battling with that?
Hello, Abhishek.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just lost you back into the times during the offline, and you might have faced what? Can you?
Yeah, so I'm saying that that perception has carried on with the consumer in some way of online being a cheaper or a discounted channel. And now that you are in the online side, building a brand, are you seeing any change in that behavior? Do you think consumers today are now willing to pay for convenience? They are willing to pay for a better product online rather than just buying it cheaper? Or do you still see that behavior sustaining?
Okay, so exactly what Bharat said, I slightly agree to what Bharat said, and I slightly disagree to what Bharat said. Considering my experience, what he said, that over a period of years after the Flipkarts and the Amazons and the Nykaa, Myntra coming up, the level of growth, or the level of, the total contribution of offline versus online should have increased to a drastic level, which has currently not been up to the mark where the analysis and the predictions were. But you need to try to understand one thing. People would say that, only 5 to 7% is online buying, remaining is still offline.
Yes, we lost you.
Before the growth of e-commerce in India, it was a huge pain. You require a lot of money, manpower, efforts to execute and go into the offline ecosystem. Distributors would not be interested investing in your brand and taking your distribution. And there is a hell lot of a pain behind that, plus a lot of investment required because of the growth that has come over a period of years. And like Sanchit said, previously consumers were very skeptical about, placing an order online. कि मैं order क्या कर रहा हूँ, मिल क्या जाएगा, COD करना है. Even today, the COD percentage has not decreased. But due to all the efforts, UPI coming up, etc., 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 and the online penetration, and finally due to the COVID, people have realized that I don't have a choice, but I need to buy online. So private labels like a Beardo or a Beautyco got an opportunity during these many years to, just
I think we just lost Suraj again.
Work from home crisis.
Bharat, what's your view on this? Have you seen the customer maturity from the discounting and pricing mentality, or do you still see? Because what I see is that even today, even with a digital
have been there, things would have been totally different.
Because we lost you in between, but
right,
it's fine. It's fine.
Right. So Suraj, just wanted
could you repeat what you said in the end for all of us, just so that we know.
So कहाँ तक सुना था?
Just the last part.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
We can.
We just missed the last part.
We just missed the last part.
So I said brands like Beautyco or Beardo, it would have been impossible for us to launch and come in the market and explore the offline opportunities. The way online has grown to the level. Today, you talk about any category, may it be mom and baby, apparels, home furnishing, any category you speak of. It is very easy for somebody to come up with a private label, scale yourself in the online ecosystem. And once you are successful, having a proper market share into that particular category, into the online space, it becomes very easy for you to then go offline. So yes, agree, the growth has been slow, but whatever has happened has made new entrepreneurs like me or many people in the industry who have come up with their own private labels and are scaling and taking it to the next big level.
Right. No, absolutely. I think from an offline perspective, online is a boon. From an online entrepreneur perspective, there is definitely, there was much more expectation. And I think what I was, the next angle which I wanted to bring up and wanted to, have Bharat's view there. I think, yes, we all grew because of, convenience and discounting and all of that. I think COD is one of the things which we are still living with as e-commerce entrepreneurs. But I also think that discounting is also still something which is, even after all this maturity, the consumer mentality, I think, is still driven a lot by discounts. So when is that going to change? Are we seeing any change in that behavior? Are people now, willing to consider online as a serious retail channel where it's not just about discounting or getting, something cheaper? So Bharat, what has been your experience there over the last couple of years? Have you seen some positive trend there?
Oh, Abhishek, tremendously. We have changed tremendously, but that volume of consumer base has not increased drastically. What I mean by that is the percentage of people who are transacting, let's say in 2015 and transacting now, that percentage increase. And by, again, when I say transacting users, I'm meaning active transacting users. And, we're still adding a lot of first-time buyers online. So to answer your question, I'll tell you the first part is that e-commerce fundamentally offers all of us entrepreneurs and also the entire ecosystem some very basic differences in supply chain. If we're going direct to consumer, if we are building something that saves us costs of the entire supply chain that used to exist traditionally of distributors, super stockists, wholesalers, retailers, right? We are going to be able to pass on those benefits to the end customers. The cost structures and the dynamics of the offline business or the traditional business versus the online business are very different, and that is where most of the entrepreneurs fail or businesses fail online. They think of, oh, we're going to save 20%, 30% margins, but they don't understand the acquisition and the cost of acquiring users online is very high. The conversion rates and the entire analytics and the DNA of a company that succeeds online. So fundamentally, we are able to pass on those benefits to the consumers. And if you are successful in doing that with managing all of your back end, and e-commerce and doing online is not a front end play, it's a back end play. Most companies that win online have their back ends very, very sorted, very lubricated. And by COD, what has happened is that the customers have matured. People do understand there's a certain trust value. There is, consumers understand that they will be able to get something at convenience is there. All of that is there. But the COD rates, for example, have not gone down. Two reasons why COD still works. Fundamentally to understand. One is the trust factor. The biggest is there is a trust deficit that consumers have. Second is laziness. A lot of Indian consumers are not, willing to take out their credit cards, look at the numbers, because they're not active users. They are not active buyers, rather. They see that as a pain point of taking out cards, entering that security issues still. So then that if you give them the option of COD, they will prefer it, because those two, kind of options, there is an option for them to transact through cash. And if they're lazy or they don't trust in your product enough, so they will not do that. But I think demonetization, I saw some changes. For example, a prepaids, again, fundamentally, they're very different. I mean, if you transact on Amazon versus you transact on a vertical store where you are going only for that purpose, if not horizontal buying is happening, still the CODs and prepaids could be very different. But I think COVID also has taught us that the security is a big issue. Safety of the manpower on ground, dealing with cash is a big issue. So all of that is there, but fundamentally, all said and done, I think we're still not in a position to do away with cash on delivery completely. I've been on both the sides. I've stopped and I've gotten back with my companies, but it's just not something that I'm completely convinced about. And that for me is a failure on the part of our growth as a ecosystem.
Right. Absolutely. No, so I think great takeaways on the consumer trend, on the consumer behavior trend. Coming back to the overall ecosystem, Anthony, because you work with a lot of traditional retailers, would like to understand. We have been talking about omni-channel also for a long time, similar to what we have been talking about e-commerce, right? I think e-commerce has still happened, but I think omni was just about to happen, and then COVID hit. So, Anthony, what has been your experience on omni-channel? I mean, how are retailers looking at e-commerce? How are their strategies changing? Are they taking this as a serious channel? Are they investing in this? Is the omni-channel wave actually happening? Have you seen any brands like really, do it? And what's been the success story? What's been the, experience?
So I guess the very first thing is to define what is omni-channel, because it's a very popular word. And at least to me, a truly omni-channel system is one in which your inventory is also pretty much visible across all the channels as well. And whether you go offline, you can buy online, you go online, you can buy offline, the system. Right? That being said, I don't think, since we work with mid-market retailers primarily, we've not really worked with the really large people. We've not found a single person that actually has the same inventory visible across stores. Right? Even some of the large players we work with, they have a Magento system which is running online commerce, and they have SAP running their entire offline stuff. They don't even talk to each other. So it's very difficult to actually say that people are actually having a truly omni-channel system. But yes, they do have two channels. They have multiple channels. Therefore, the word omni is used. Right? I also feel that to the points made by Suraj, Bharat, and Sanchit earlier, if you want to change consumer behavior, it's got to start from you first. So I think early on in the past, when we started working last year with a bunch of offline retailers going online, a lot of them were very iffy about online because that perception of discounting. Then of course, the problem is they spend money. A lot of the offline stores have online stores, but people come online and go buy offline. Some of them, the revenue is being tracked separately, so they have more people, they're spending more online, but less revenue offline. So even your entire books and how you look at your business should be done in an omni-channel way. right? If you're going to treat them as separate entities, you'll always find that one is going to be better than the other one, or there's going to be a bunch of things. So I think internally, if you want to start leveraging the entire world of omni-channel, you got to start thinking like an omni-channel retailer and treat us as one entity and look at your entire P&L as one entire. I mean, obviously, look at the fine numbers, but we have one retailer has about 600 stores in India, right? Offline, online is going up crazy, but I'm sure they go add to cart and they go buy offline. Because some of their products are, I would say, very essential in life. So you probably can't wait for 3 days to get it right now. But that doesn't mean online is doing badly, right? So we're trying to, like right now, we're having a lot of these conversations with retailers, telling them what to expect, how to kind of look at their data. And like given what Bharat said, right, the backends, understanding the cost of like the entire system as well, is something they have to understand. Because traditional retailers, when they come online, when you talk about customer acquisition cost, it just flies over their heads, right? And that's like literally a pill that can kill you in the future if you don't know how to take it right. So unless you truly understand what it is to be an omni-channel retailer, you just can't, just going online, starting a store and running a few Facebook ads doesn't really mean you're going to really have any form of profits. Like, trust me, I can't even make you get profits no matter what, right? Because even in our case, like what we do is we try and show the right products in an e-commerce store. But if you target your ads to the wrong segment in Google AdWords and Facebook, it doesn't mean that the person coming is going to buy. So there's so many other moving parts when it comes to online. But the good thing is you have visibility of data, right? So having the right team in the backend, analyze your data, slice and dice it, figuring out where your profitability is, where your acquisition cost is, that is what's going to make you a truly successful omnichannel retailer, right? I also feel right now with the fact, again, back to COVID a bit, right? So I feel that because we've kind of paused the physical buying behavior, a lot of those items are now becoming essential for us online. So what I've seen right now is there was a bit of discounting. I think discounting is a way to kind of get people into your store. But the data we are seeing is that typically like as a 10%, 15% of your entire catalog is what contributes to maximum sales, which also means how do you merchandise your store? You may have a banner outside saying 90% off, but you walk into the physical store, you may start showing full price products in the beginning and push all the discounts towards the end. Once you have the person in-house, then you can start engaging with them in a bunch of channels. Like right now, we have a customer that's using our search APIs integrated with a chatbot, right? To start conversation to get them engaged. Because again, I think Sanchit, you were saying, right?
Right.
Almost 80% of your time online is spent on a bunch of other apps, which basically means your time is limited. So how are you going to get that person engaged ASAP in your online store before the next WhatsApp message or the Facebook hits that person? They click on that, they go, you've lost $10 on Facebook ads or whatever you spent so far, right? So now they're trying new things of trying to integrate APIs into bots and a bunch of push notifications to make that real-time personalized to a user right now. But it's more than just having an e-commerce store, right? I mean, like I said, if you are a large enough brand where you have no other competition, maybe this will work for you. But if there is an equivalent out there, you are fighting for mind space. Mind space not just to get the person into your store, but to make sure they stay in that store till they view the first product. From that point onwards, I think your chance of conversion is higher. But the problem is if they're just browsing for about 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, your risk of them leaving is just increasing by the second.
Great, great. Suraj, you have any insights on how the offline retailers are adopting to e-commerce, and are they going for omni-channel? Are they not giving a fight at all? How the consumer behavior offline is now affected, not because of COVID, but generally because of e-commerce?
So generally, I would like to say that I don't think so. Any offline retailer is not willing to come online. The the only point is their bandwidth supporting them, because a general mentality into the entire offline ecosystem is कि online bechna is a joke. Just go, click a button, press the button, sell now, go to sleep, and orders will start pumping in, and you'll start getting the money. The day I had entered the e-commerce space, so I always used to tell my entire offline retail fraternity कि आपको लगता है उतना easy नहीं है online बेचना. It has its own challenges, pros and cons and everything. And it is not that just, press a button and go to sleep and orders would start pumping in. So every offline retailer wants to come online, but once they come online and they face the heat of the returns, the unsellable items, the policies of the marketplaces, they start getting a feel कि हम तो ऐसा नहीं करते थे, और ऐसा नहीं होता था, ऐसे तो कोई प्रोडक्ट कैसे वापस दे देगा. I mean, I'm selling an iPhone and I get a stone back. I have shipped a BlackBerry and I get a second-hand Chinese back, a device. So then you obviously, the marketplaces are there to protect you and do their part of the bit. But this is part of the business that you are doing, because the marketplaces, when are expanding, they need to also take care about the consumer interest and the trust of the consumer. Today, as Bharat had rightly said, the growth has not come to that level because the Indian consumers were never habituated to shop online. And once they shop online and pay a COD or a prepaid, majority of the consumers think that if I go for a COD option, मैं डब्बा खोलूंगा, देखूंगा, फिर पैसे दूंगा. But the moment when the product comes, they realize this is not an open delivery. And they say, नहीं, डब्बा खोल के नहीं दिखाओगे तो पैसा नहीं दूंगा, नहीं चाहिए, जाओ भग जा, नहीं चाहिए. So there are multiple reasons that happen. Adding to the discount part bit is that when you are present as a brand online, you know, the consumers think, why should I buy online? What is the difference? So brands started giving an average 20, 25, 30% discount. Now suddenly, when any of the brand would reduce their discounts, a consumer who was looking at your brand at a certain time, month, period, year, would now come and say, "Arey, 10 days pehle to this brand was giving a 30% discount, today 10% discount." So there is a big question mark that, are you a discounted brand? So it takes a lot of time for a private label to change the entire methodology, how they used to operate. That, are you a discounted only brand? Okay, you're not a discounted only brand. Overnight, you will never be able to reduce the discounts. There are ways and mechanisms. You offer freebies, you offer subscriptions, you offer other benefits, and slowly and gradually keep on reducing the discount. But overall, make sure that the consumer is offered the right, thing that he is spending for the money that he is going to give you. Now, when you talk about offline, the offline guys and the retailers have always been against online. I don't know for what reason. But yes, when I used to be offline and I operate from a certain area or a certain sector, I am limited to a particular geography or a particular radius. Uske alawa, I am not going to have consumers. I cannot expect somebody from a Mumbai or a Delhi or a Bangalore or a Pune to come to Gandhinagar, Gujarat and purchase a mobile phone or a beauty product from my store. But when I am online, it is an unlimited opportunity. Sitting at one place, I can cater to pan India and also the entire globe. So this is the difference of being online. But somehow the offline guys have certain kind of an issue, maybe because they cannot go online or they don't want to go online, or they have tried and they have failed because they are not ready to digest the fact about the pros and cons of the online versus offline. And talking about the discounts, offline में कोई स्टोर, कोई रिटेलर नहीं होगा जो डिस्काउंट नहीं देता है. द पॉइंट इज, वो दिखता नहीं है, वो बाहर नहीं आता है. और ऑनलाइन में टैग दिखता है तो वो पब्लिक हो जाता है, एंड हेंस सो मच शोशा एंड द नॉइज एंड द लाउड वॉर दैट इज गोइंग ऑन. बाकी एवरी रिटेलर इन ऑफलाइन वुड गो वे बियॉन्ड टू ट्राई टू close that particular sale or liquidate that inventory or pass on the discounts to, get that cash or the monetary benefit and get that customer acquired.
And in line with what Suraj
So I would like to add, in fact, so to what Suraj is saying, right? So we also actually work with a lot of offline retailers, and exactly what, Anthony also mentioned, that when we were speaking to such retailers, I think the growth that they have done pre-COVID levels, that was humongous. That was like from a single store, they have grown to 6 stores. That's what we have witnessed with certain offline retailers. And suddenly when COVID hits, so it actually, all of the growth parameters actually goes to the drain, right? So when we are talking to such offline retailers, I think the biggest challenge that comes in is not to, not to start their own website or not to start their online selling channels. But I think it comes more with that creating that same experience what a person actually receives or person experiences while visiting the store itself. And that's what we realized while talking to a lot of offline retailers in terms of a person coming to a store. Because right now, if you see a lot of offline stores, they offer a lot of personalized experiences as well, right? And that's what the biggest challenge in terms of the offline retailers were facing, that how with their current inventory levels and with them going online initiative due to COVID, how can they create that experience for the consumer that they were able to create in their store, right? And that's what the biggest challenge actually came about for an offline store. And I believe that, so I have also seen one or two solutions in terms of how they can better their consumer experience and customer experience with an online thing as well, while they are starting from offline to online. And I have seen a lot of solutions which also includes having a transparent supply chain, having if I talk about the artisan product, if I talk about a handicraft product, so we are putting up a normal QR code. So if you go to an offline store, right, you will see a lot of artisan stories. You will actually relate to the product, that where that product is made from, who's the artisan who's responsible for making that product. And that same experience and stories is something which can be built online as well. And that's something that the brand, the offline retailer, they're now targeting, that they can have a personalized QR code for every product they're selling to a consumer, which can contain information about the material, information about the artisan and the story of the village, in fact, right? Which cumulatively itself spreads that how that product is made or what are the people involved in making that product. So I think that's also one of the challenges, that offline stores today are facing, that how can they better personalize experiences for people if they're moving into an online strategy.
Abhishek, I'll add 2 points to this very quickly because we're running short of time. My first point is regarding Suraj's mention of discounting. We work with several retailers and institutions, so the HoReCa segment. We provide them our products, and absolutely right, they discount more than online. They would typically, those times of discounting, 2014, 15, 16, those are gone. That's not happening because ultimately everybody realized that was an inventory-led model when these Amazons of the world wanted to grab that market share. All the discounting is done by the sellers. They bear the brunt of discounting. They bear the brunt of aggressive price wars. So slowly everybody, last 2-3 years, everybody's realized that there is a certain way of discounting, and honestly, a 100-page book can be written on discounting in the online e-commerce, ecosystem. So discounting is, I don't think it's a point of discussion anymore, especially when offline guys or anybody tries to talk about it. Even the smarter ones, like the bigger ones, have started to realize that, it's not a point of contention anymore. My second thing is regarding the traditional way of doing business and traditional retailers. If you look at it from their lens, you see how right they were. By what I mean is, organizations doing 1,000 crores, 2,000 crores, 5,000 crores in annual top lines. You give them online, and they come and they start to do 2 crores, 5 crores a month, 6 crores, and they realize it's just not worth their time. Pre-COVID, I know of large companies that it's a joke. Absolutely, what Suraj mentioned. It's a joke for them to be online. It's like they try it, they see, oh, we are doing 1 crore of business, we'll do what, 15, 20 crores of business, we'll put up a teams. They don't get it because the numbers don't match for them, because the consumer adoption isn't there yet, right? For them to do even 10% online of their business, any 1,000 crore, 2,000 crore kind of online, offline top line company, for them, now is the time. I feel that is why I was saying the leapfrog will happen, because these guys have started to come online aggressively because the offline, the doors are shut. Now, when their marketing budgets start to go online, when they start spending 10 crores, 5 crores, all those ATL, BTL is happening, which doesn't have anything to do with performance, just branding exercises, when they start doing all of it, because otherwise it was not needed. From 5,000 crores, they were moving to 5,500 crores, moving to 6,000, moving to 10,000 crores in 5 years. It was e-commerce, online e-commerce is a very minuscule part for them now, but this will change their strategies, and this shift, I think, could not have been possible without something like shutting the doors.
But also, I feel that with this investment in ads, I also think that they have to invest in people. Just getting the same offline team to run online. Like if I talk to my
Yeah.
colleagues in different countries, right?
Right.
I would talk to a growth engineer, I would talk to a CTO, I would talk to a product manager on the other side. Whereas here I have a coordinator. The profiles are very different, right? They
Yeah.
don't invest in people also. So you need to also start with investing in the right people to run that business and then slowly scale it up like its own company. Because just putting the money in there without the right people.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, and Abhishek, it is hard. I have worked with people who are traditionally building companies in the offline space, 500 crores, 600 crores kind of top line. It is extremely hard to make them understand that online is a game of perseverance. It is not about opening a store and 2 taka mera 3 taka iska apna sahi, it is a very strategic way to do it. And as Anthony mentioned, you need skilled manpower to do it, very, very skilled people to do it the right way. And then they come online, then they do all that wrong advertising and they realize, it is not a magic pill.
True. Great, guys. I think we have 10 minutes and we have a couple of questions which some of the participants would like us to answer. So I would just take a couple of them. Dhruvin Shah wants to he has been working on a fashion and clothing startup and wondering how could it work post COVID, and considering also launching own manufacturing line for it. So the wants our advice, a suggestion on the fashion category on e-commerce. How is it looking, and is it advisable right now to set up a manufacturing line? If anyone would like to take it up.
Manufacturing is a beast. My only 2 cents on this would be that manufacturing is a beast in itself, and it depends on your aspirations. We don't know yet what are your aspirations. Do you want to build a 10 crore company, 1 crore company, or a 500 crore company? Because manufacturing is forever. If you get into it, you really need to understand the nitty-gritties of it, because it can drain you of your capital very quickly. And manufacturing backward integration, I think personally that suits more to my kind of entrepreneurship style. But I've seen both kinds of founders and entrepreneurs, people who do a lot of reinventing the wheel, doing a lot of IP work themselves, going to the source, all of that stuff. And also people who do a lot of contract outside manufacturing, get things done, assemble it, or just do what they're really good at, which is sales and marketing. So both kinds succeed really well, but it depends on your core skill set. So focus on your core skill set. Do not spread yourself too thin, too wide, too soon.
Suraj, you wanted to add something there?
So what I wanted to say, Bharat already said. I had 2 angles. If I want to get into manufacturing, one is I get into manufacturing and start, manufacturing for my own self as well as for third party sellers or private labels. But when I am starting a new venture or a private label on my own, it would be a wrong step unless and until I have certain numbers and certain volumes in place. Thinking about setting up our own manufacturing unit would, it is like a beast, and it would, eat up everything. Rather, I would focus on my core skills. There would be a time where my numbers would be so huge, then I could think of setting up my own in-house manufacturing unit.
Right. So moving to the next question, someone wants to know how much cash or COD is important in e-commerce businesses today. I think it is still 70% for everyone, the COD?
75 to 80% is still COD, and rest is prepaid.
Yeah. Same for rest of you, Bharat. 75, 80% still?
No, not at all. It has changed drastically. Amazon, I think, is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, especially after COVID. And I know of projects being assigned to top consulting companies inside of Flipkart, inside of these large, because Walmart is now putting a lot of emphasis on doing away with COD in a way which is not very, which is implicit in nature. So they are doing, because these guys have to do it for us to really kind of do it at a level which is sustainable. But honestly, we have gone down. Our prepaid and COD ratios have gone down about 50-50. But that also, I think, is due to a lot of tweaks that we continue to do to make sure that we do not get it. And I mean, it's ultimately about repeat. It's ultimately about a lot of other factors which people who do it with time, they will understand how to make sure prepaid is more than COD.
Abhishek, the question is also related to the category that we are talking about.
Yeah, fashion.
So when we talk about fashion and low ticket size items, the COD ratio is still very high. But when you talk about a mobile electronic CE/PC category, where the buyer is not confident enough of carrying a 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 or a 80,000 cash, is also into getting him converted from a COD to a prepaid, plus the no cost EMI and multiple other cashback and rewards options that he is getting, which on a COD would never be possible. But for a ticket size of less than 700, 800 or 1,000 rupees, which is typically fashion, plus in a kind of a situation where he thinks that a small size is something which I want to buy. But when he buys, he realizes that nahi, ये brand का तो medium size मेरे को मिलना चाहिए था. So low ticket size items, the COD is still gaining a heavy market share, and things have not changed to a drastic minor changed kind of.
True. Anthony, someone here wants to know your email ID.
I've just messaged that person to connect on LinkedIn.
Okay, great. Sanchit, one last question, which I think you can answer. Mahi Singh has written that I'm working on a social impact startup. It focuses on artists and artisans. Given the consumer spending behavior recently, what are your thoughts? Do we wait and build the product and target consumer when the conditions improve?
I think see, when it comes to the artisan product, so with artisan products, we always think of it, an artisan product, as more of a want-based product, right? And that's what we were discussing initially also. But I think with time, what we and my company and everyone has realized is that it can be more of a need-based product also, right? And so I'm talking about more of textiles and fashion products here, which right now we majorly focus on to, right? And which is again made from artisans and weavers, which is coming from different parts of India. But the price point is such that which is easily affordable by the buyer, right? Which can be an offline buyer, which can be an online buyer. It does not matter. But in terms of the right product mix, that's something which is very important. Which with the artisan also you can focus and build your product category on that price level. And since we focus a lot on B2B side of it, so obviously our focus lies a lot in terms of maintaining that price level for our buyers.
Great. Thanks, Sanchit. I think we are just run out of time. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot of other questions. Would try to answer this, on the text format post the session. But yeah, thanks a lot to all the panelists, Bharat, Sanchit, Anthony, and Suraj. I think we have a lot of good takeaways. And there's one last question I think which can define the whole session. Preeti is asking, what will be the future of online post-COVID or with the new normal? I think that's like, that's like something which all of us would love the answer to. But what do you think is the future? What is the future?
So I would like to, briefly answer this. We were in a very bad shape because majority of our products were not into essential category, and we were it would take September, October, or maybe Diwali to come back to normal. Now June is the month. One of the panelists already said that the numbers have already reached the pace at which they were. So no doubt there was a 3 months revenue loss, but the new normal has come back to the old normal in the month of June and July. By July end, we are expecting to have a growth numbers rather than talking about the new normal. So I think online is the new normal.
Great. I think that's a great end to the session. And thanks a lot to all the panelists. Thanks a lot to all the participants. I think the host has just mentioned the email ID. So if you have any further queries, please email us, and we will definitely get you the answers from our panelists. and best of luck to all of us. I hope we are able to capitalize on the e-commerce boom and prove the naysayers wrong. Have a great evening, all of you. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, everyone. Very nice interacting.
Be safe. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Stay safe. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.